Well, Donald Trump retreated again today. Donald Trump never announced his full retreat of National Guard troops from the streets of American cities. But as we reported last night, Donald Trump no longer has a single member of the National Guard patrolling a single street in America. That full and humiliating retreat came before Donald Trump sent his so-called border czar, Tom Homan, to Minneapolis to manage the Trump retreat from Minneapolis, which Tom Homan announced on his first full week in that city 3 weeks ago. And today, Tom Homan made the announcement that everyone in Minneapolis and most people in the country have been waiting for.
I have proposed, and President Trump has concurred, that this surge operation conclude.
Donald Trump is not the first president to launch an unwinnable war. Presidents have been doing that with disturbing regularity since Vietnam. Donald Trump is the first president to launch an unwinnable war in the United States against the people of the United States, people who then used the rights granted to them in the Constitution to rise up and protest against Donald Trump's war. And the protesters won. The protesters faced a unique challenge in getting through to Donald Trump and forcing him to retreat. They had to change the mind of a man who has no connection to reality, no comprehension of the Constitution, and no basic human decency. A man who is surrounded by the most incompetent, ignorant, and amoral cabinet and advisors in the history of the American presidency. A group that on any given day is capable of saying things that no one who ever emerged from the Senate confirmation process in our history could have possibly said before the weakest Republican Senate in history decided to confirm Donald Trump's cabinet. Today's winner of the daily competition for most perverse thing said by a Trump cabinet member said, and these are the exact words, quote, "I'm not scared of a germ, you know. I used to snort cocaine off of toilet seats." Unfortunately, guessing who said that about germs and cocaine and toilet seats is easier than it should be.
I'm not scared of a germ. You know, I used to snort cocaine off of toilet seats.
Yes, that is Donald Trump's Secretary of Health and Human Services telling us why we shouldn't be afraid of communicable diseases, at least the ones he didn't get from toilet seats. It would be nice if we could regard something like that as funny. But he is the sociopath who deliberately steered people to their deaths with his opposition to vaccines, the single greatest advance in the history of medicine. Donald Trump has found more ways to kill more people during peacetime than any president in history. He appoints a madman to be the Secretary of Health. And then with Elon Musk's guidance, Donald Trump takes food away from people in the middle of famine in Africa. He took HIV medicine away from people who needed to survive, medicine that was being delivered in Africa thanks to the initiative of Republican President George W. Bush. Donald Trump said, no, we don't want to save those lives. The food was already in transit to those starving people, and Donald Trump became the first president in history to deny food to starving people. The United States of America has been helping people for 200 years in famine until Donald Trump said, let them die, let them starve to death, because Elon Musk wanted them to. The world's richest man killing the world's poorest children. And so how does a protester on the streets of Minneapolis get through the heartless depravity that defines Donald Trump and surrounds Donald Trump? Video recordings proved Renee Good and Alex Preddy were murdered in Minneapolis by Donald Trump's invasion forces. And that made Donald Trump's invasion of Minneapolis ultimately politically untenable for him, as his poll numbers found new lows every week. And so after 2 murders, Donald Trump orders his invasion forces into retreat.
A significant drawdown has already been underway this week and will continue to the next week. A small footprint of personnel will remain for a period of time to close out and transition full command and control back to the field office.
After Donald Trump's full retreat announced today, Minnesota's Governor Tim Walz said this.
Minnesotans never wavered. And for that, I will be forever grateful. I think it's probably safe to say the rest of the country will be forever grateful because they showed what it means to stand up for what's right, to stand up for the true principles of this country, to stand with the Constitution, and to stand with human decency. And so I want to note that the announcement today by Mr. Holman, we are cautiously optimistic, as we've said, and that this surge of untrained, aggressive federal agents are going to leave Minnesota. And I guess they'll go wherever they're going to go. But the fact of the matter is, they left us with deep damage, generational trauma. They left us with economic ruin in some cases. They left us with many unanswered questions. Where are our children? Where and what is the process of the investigations into those that were responsible for the deaths of Renee and Alex?
This evening, the mayor of Minneapolis told Chris Hayes that the credit for driving Donald Trump out of Minneapolis belongs to the people of Minneapolis.
It is a great relief, and the people that deserve the credit are the residents of Minneapolis. It's the 435,000 people. It's the tens of thousands of people that have been protesting peacefully in the streets, that have been standing up for their neighbors, getting groceries to people that are terrified to go outside. And I'm sure there's going to be relief. I think what you saw is you saw a federal government and an administration that thought that they were going to break the people of Minneapolis down. They thought that we were going to back down and sort of kowtow to whatever it is that they were looking to get done, not just locally in Minneapolis, but nationwide. They were looking to implement a national agenda based on coercing us to change local policy. And here's the thing, we didn't. The people of Minneapolis stood up. They stood up for their neighbors. They loved on each other. And I think that's the kind of patriotism that is ultimately going to get us through this.
Our first guest tonight, Hennepin County Attorney Mary Moriarty, who is in charge of the homicide investigations of the killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, said this.
If the federal government is really ending this occupation, the reason is that Minnesotans resisted in countless nonviolent ways. This community continues to show inspirational energy and strength in caring for neighbors. Our immigrant community has demonstrated incredible courage. To the people of Hennepin County, you are owed a debt of gratitude that can never be repaid for showing the federal government and the nation just how much you care for your neighbors and for democracy.
Donald Trump is in retreat again. Donald Trump has retreated from his National Guard deployment in Washington, D.C. Donald Trump retreated from his ICE invasion force in Chicago. Donald Trump retreated from his deployment of National Guard and ICE invasion forces in Los Angeles. And now Donald Trump has retreated from Minneapolis. And maybe this time Donald Trump has learned a lesson, not a lesson in humanity, not a lesson in the Constitution, not a lesson in the First Amendment right to protest, but a lesson in what happens to his polls as his invasion forces continue their obviously and now provably deliberate homicidal cruelty. Where human beings have a conscience, Donald Trump has poll numbers. And his poll numbers are telling him, never again. His poll numbers are telling him, do not pick another American city to attack. Do not send your murderous forces on another invasion of another American city. That's what Donald Trump's poll numbers are telling him tonight.